Welcome, one and all, to Tune In Radio U podcast. My name is Ruth. I will be your host, and joining me today is the absolutely awesome Samantha Moir. She is an emotional and cognitive behavioral coach and a writer. And I'm just keen. We're going to do something a little bit different today with the podcast episode and the interview. And all will be revealed very soon. But firstly, Samantha, welcome so much. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me today, Ruth. I'm really excited to join you on this podcast.
Yes, I'm very excited and nervous, but fine. It's all good. So do you want to tell myself and the listeners a little bit about yourself and what led you to become a coach and what exactly it entails to be an emotional and cognitive behavioral coach?
Okay, so bear with me. There's going to be a few twists and turns in this story.
Brilliant.
I have always been, and I think everyone at some capacity is a people person. Like they feel the need within themselves to be going out and helping other people at some level, whether that's serving coffee or whether that's being a hairdresser or whether that's sitting down and listening to people. For me, coaching and where that really originated from was just my absolute love for connecting and communicating with people. That's like the original story of where that need really came from, right? That need to just be able to sit down and be better on a one-on-one level than I was in a group, to really like see people, see what they're saying to me on all levels of communication, what their eyes were saying, what their body was saying, and really being able to be able to block out the noise for them and really actually, without sounding too wanky about it, hold space for them to actually be like, you know, I'm actually here really seeing you and everything else can stop. And I found that was like, it energized me. Like it actually revived me rather than depleting me. And that's how you always know that you're on the right track, right? Is like you're always going that way. So for me, it was always like from a very, very young age, always had that face that was like, people would come across to me in the middle of a bar and tell me their stuff, or I would be out and people would start talking to me about the things that were going on. So it was always kind of signposted to me that my role was just as a listener. That was my role. That's what my name means, is listener, right? Yeah. So it was like always that just sitting down and hearing people. But the actual origin of the story of becoming a coach was, and I think for most coaches, is we coach on the biggest things that we found difficult in our lives, right? So for me, it was always like going through, and I won't go too much into the doom and gloom of it, but the tumultuous life that I had growing up. Like I was out of home at 14. I had didn't finish school, was just really off the track, really just living my best life, or so I thought, but I was really destructive, and I was really trying to find myself and my own independence and my own identity all at the same time. So I have learnt a lot and done a lot of things, like I said, living out of home since 14, and kind of getting houses and doing things like that makes you become very self-reliant and very me first, because it's from a place of survival. It comes from a place of like trying to understand how to get my needs met from just the basic, like eat, sleep, be safe, all of those different things, right? So having that quite young and having that at a place where I was like having to learn those things very, very young made me very me first, like, and not even in a self-centered way, but made it very like, oh, if I need it and I want it, I need to go after it. So I had this real fire in me, which at the time wasn't as assertive as what it is now. It was a lot more aggressive, and it was a lot more scrappy, and it was a lot more kind of digging my nails in and going after the things that I wanted, and doing a lot of things that I wasn't proud of, doing a lot of things that I wasn't happy with, that I look back on and go, oh, girl, that was a time, that was a thing, right? but it was like going through and actually understanding that the benefit of having that happen so young was that it did make me centered. So I never really had as many issues as other people when it came to, like, I'm too nervous to go after the thing that I want. I'm too scared to go and say the thing. For me, it had become so survival that it was like, if I need to be at that table, I need to be at that table. So as I was kind of integrating that through my life and and I had children young, I had children at 22. So, you know, I was kind of studying and working and doing all the different things. I was coming across a lot of people that were saying to me, like, I just want to know how you got here. I just want to know how I can integrate some of this, like, kind of fierce fire that you've got going on, this badass kind of energy that just makes you just like move people out the way and not be worried about, you know, what people think, and doing all of that. So, and I love that. I love being able to sit with people one-on-one and being able to empower their, like, no, girl, get it, you got it. But I had to actually go and step back and actually learn the processes through not using it in an aggressive way, not using it in a self-deprecating way, not using it as a bulldozing way to actually just overpower people. So I had to actually step back and do a good 5 to 7 years while my children were really small of using that time, because you're predominantly at home when you're a mum and doing all of those things, of actually having to read, learn, study, do all the things that actually allowed me to go through the processes of really being able to not even just understand why I do things and how I got there, and the traumas that had got me there, and the you know, fight or flight survival mode things that tweak me, that make me kind of stand up really quick, or how I'd got myself into situations and how I'd created it and my responsibility. But at the most part, it was actually about really understanding who I was, from who I could be at my darkest and who I could be at my most hopeful. So it was like really having to learn how to accept what I could and have done, and also and what I'm capable of, and also understanding on the light side what I can and will do on the positive side. But for me, the freedom and why I feel so good in my coaching space is because I've integrated back from what I started out with, being able to see people and hold space for people, but actually allowing them to show all of it to me, not just the sides that they want to show me that they feel like they should say, or they can't say that to me, or that's too offensive, or that's too whatever. It's like, no, back to where I was in the beginning, and why I love coaching was literally because I want to sit here and drown it all out and hear you and see you and what you've got going on, and just be like, okay, now that we've established that you're a human being, that's good. Now, what are we going to do with that so that you can use that to your advantage and use that to help people, and not use it as a shame tool, so that you might consciously be going out into the world doing the good things, but your darkness is driving you and you're unaware of how these repetition and these repetitive cycles keep playing out, and not being able to see, or not being at the very least being able to acknowledge the survival mode, the human mode in you, that also might have an agenda or might be doing something manipulative. And once you can understand those parts of you, then you're like, oh, so that's manipulator talking. So I've got to understand free will and allow them to do that. So I say my piece and now I step it back. So I'm doing what's right for me, but I'm also understanding that that's trying to get something and I'm after something, and I need to communicate that better because that's what's driving me. And actually being able to accept all parts of it, because it allows a level of freedom that with my coaching clients, I see the rigid box that they put themselves in having to be good all the time. And the clients that I'm dealing with are the ones that quietly are like, how do I exercise these demons without A, burning my life down, B, doing damage to my relationships, and C, actually being like, I can't withstand the pressure anymore to be always good all the time. I want to go on a bender. I want to go and yell at someone. I want to go and tell this person to fuck off or whatever. And just having this, like, I need to exercise this, but it's all or nothing, because I've spent so much time holding it in a little box at the same time that I haven't I don't know how to actually do it in a healthy way. So I'm just going to keep shaming it and pushing it down. And then that's how people abandon families and get back on drugs and do all these things, because it's like a pressure cooker, because it's been growing in behind you, and all the good that you're doing and all the things that you're doing in your business and all the things that you're trying to grow just comes sweeping down with this self-saboteur that just comes in and cuts it all down, and don't know how it's got you there, because there's all this other stuff that you haven't been looking at. Full integration for me is being able to go like, oh, I'm capable of the most heinous things and I'm capable of the most angelic things at the same time. And every part of my life is just literally based on a choice and how I move towards that and use it, and vice versa. And yeah, so for me, coaching has been, to get back to the original question, is so emotional intelligence, cognitive behavior. That was me going back and actually being able to find the actual processes and learn the processes that would take them through. And it was more just actually, for me, just kind of being able to allow me the room to be and practice the way that I wanted in a safer way, and being able to understand it 6 layers deep, not just kind of what was happening on the surface and all of that, what was going on in your head, and your emotions sometimes can be completely out of alignment. So it was about understanding how they kind of work together like that, but also how separately you can use them individually as well, and understanding the emotion of how you feel about a person, like you see in relationships, how I feel about the person. I know that I shouldn't like them, but emotionally I've got a different thing going on. And it's about learning how to understand and read both at the same time. So I just went back and studied that, just to be able to really bolster what I already knew, but just to really solidify it in what I was doing with it.
Awesome. So what are the types of people that you generally see, like your clients? Is there a specific type, or is it like all walks of life?
Look, I normally attract me, right? So my kind of avatar, right, which is normally women in their 30s. Most of them, the majority of them, have kids, or are kind of are just newly single, or are kind of just in that. A lot of them are entrepreneurs. A lot of them are like just trying to make their way in the world, are doing good, are doing well, like they're doing well in their life, but they're just needing that little bit extra help. They're not kind of really in the thick of addictions or anything. I don't really specialize in things like that, and at that grassroots level with things like that. And mine is more helping the everyday person, because I just kind of see myself like that, as the every kind of day person, mum, worker, business owner, all of those. So I tend to attract the same kind of people who are looking for, they've got the basic idea. They're really attracted to spirituality and crystals and readings and alternative medicines and things like that, but they're just needing that little bit more of understanding how they can integrate it a little bit more. I don't have to go through from baseline all the way up. They've got a really good idea. They're quite solid in what they want. They're quite good with their goal setting and stuff, but they just need that little bit. They need that outlet to be like, I'm ticking every goal box, like all the gratitude and journaling and and doing all the things that are on the list, and meditating and sleeping and, diet and doing all the things. But they're like, I just have this one thing that I need someone to hear me say, and I need someone to actually witness that this is happening, because I love what I'm doing and I love the track that I'm on. And it's not that all those things are working beautifully for me, but I just need to get this one extra thing. And I don't know if I can talk about it with my friends or family or my other coaches or whatever. So I just need that person to hear it. So I tend to attract my same kind of avatar as me, which always makes me feel like it is just as helpful for me as well, because it keeps me humble in my own stuff, because I'll be triggered just as much as what they are at the time, because it will make me not be arrogant at the same time, not be sitting there as the I know it all, and I've learnt it and I've healed it and I'm past it, and I'm like, oh no, that's scratching on my own button. So after I've had a call, I will go through my own processes through myself and be like, oh, that's me, that's a thing that I've got going on, and it will reveal itself to me. So it's really a beautiful two-way exchange in having it like that as well, because I get insight to myself that I might also spiritually bypass in order to be the teacher, it allows me to also be the student at the same time. So that's why I really love getting in front of people that can really reflect my own stuff back all the time as well.
Beautiful. Now you're good friends with the beautiful soul, Holly Loxton, who was my last podcast interviewee. And it's really interesting because when we were talking before, the other day, just kind of getting to know each other a little bit, you were saying, hey, you guys have really interesting discussions all the time about, and one of those things was about trauma. Holly's really into trauma. It's one of her, special.
She's badass.
Yeah. And her theory on trauma, like maybe taking from readings and research that she's done and studies that she's done on trauma, taken from maybe Peter Levine's work and that sort of stuff, that where the trauma is actually stored in the body. So that this is, her theory, but you've got a different theory, which I thought was really interesting. Can you go into a little bit of that?
Yeah. So, and like I said, Holly and I speak to her on the daily. She's my girl. And we have these, because she does a lot of body work and I'm really in the mind and kind of more emotional space. So we have these, because we're always looking at bolstering each other and kind of really pushing each other on those things. One of the things that, and I don't know this verbatim of how it's written, but like I'll be paraphrasing, but it's kind of like the question that I've put forward regarding trauma and it being stored in the body, because I'm so rational about it and so logical about it, which doesn't always work in your favor all the time, is that if every cell in your body is regenerating and is dying off and regenerating every 7 years, and you're talking about trauma that's happened over a decade ago, but you don't actually have a single cell that was present for that trauma existing. There was not a hair on your head, not a flake of skin that was actually there for that trauma. That for me, and I know Holly would be able to get on here and have a really good talk about it because we've done it. For me, it's like, is that not then generated from your mind or actually being held as part of your identity or being part of your story, that for lack of better terms, even being used as a positive and a negative, but also something you're wanting to almost cling to? Because if all your cells have regenerated and there's no part of you that was even existed while that trauma happened, is that something that we're actually trying to hold on to for the good, the bad, or the ugly, for whatever purpose that it serves? Is that not something that we're generating after a certain amount of time because our body is no longer showing that anymore? So we have really great discussions about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I'm still very green on the subject. I am doing quite a bit of reading around it, but yeah, I don't think we know enough about the body and the mind and how truly powerful and incredible and magical it really is, and how it all works together and regenerates and all that sort of stuff. I just don't think we know enough. Like, so I don't know. It all sounds like plausible, right? The fact that there's, like Peter Levine's theory where, there's an energy that comes up when there's a trauma that happens. And then if you get into that freeze mode, it kind of gets stuck there. And because you didn't complete that cycle of the trauma, it gets stuck. And then that's when other things manifest. So that kind of makes sense to me.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Like, this is my my inquisitive kind of nature.
Whoa.
Is because I've thought about that as well, and about like the energy being trapped, and I definitely do believe it. But it's also like, so for me, when I speak to people about having like emotional responses to a past thing, right? Or to a past trauma or to a past experience, whether it's good or bad. I'll say to women that have had children about how quickly you can be catapulted back into an emotion by focusing on it too much. I'll say to them, think about the day your first child was born. Now, instantly, smile, excited, happy, just they get emotional. They're just in this complete love mode because they're accessing that emotion that has come up, that has been really, really good. So for me, I'm like, what is the differentiation between, so I can hook back into the day that my son was born because it makes me feel good, but I'm supposed to not have any emotional response to a memory that made me feel sad or made me feel scared or anything like that. Like I can look back on memories and be like, yeah, the thought of that makes me emotional about how emotional I was at the time, or it makes me emotional to think of the depths of sadness that I have. But I also am not in a time, I'm hanging onto my seat being like, I'm actually in the present, but I'm having that emotional response based on the memory of my life. Like that's my life. Like that's, I've got this whole spectrum of memories that I want to know that I have that emotional range, not only to draw on of what that feels like, but it's also allows me to go back to that memory and almost, it's like going, for me, it's like walking into a room that's like a dream and looking around it and being able to view it again because I am in that emotion. But maybe because with the self-awareness that you know that you're not actually in it right now, like it's not happening right now. But for me, it's like, you know, because for me, it's like if someone was to pass away and that time of their passing was really sad, I wouldn't want to not be able to access that either. Like I wouldn't not, because it'd be like that was a really sad, harrowing time for me, and being able to actually look at it and being able to express it, and anytime that I wanted to actually go back there and do that, because I also want to be able to access the memories of when the things were good with them as well, and being able to really bunny hop off those emotions at the same time. So for me, and this is just because of how strongly I feel about integrating both, I'm always like, I know that there's a difference of the energy being trapped, but I think it's, for me, when I think about the energy and processing it out, I'm like, and this is my own personal choice, but it's like, I want to be able to access that emotional range. I want to be able to be like, yeah, look, that was a really upsetting, hard time, and it makes me emotional, and then be like, yeah, you know, like actually being able to be through the human experience of being able to actually draw on those experiences, because I just feel like there's a level of, and maybe it's just the way that is always being articulated to me, but there's always like this keep the good, ditch the bad, and I'm just like, what about just like loving on all the, you know, thinking back on a memory and being like, yeah, that made me sad, and maybe having a teary about it because you might need to, because it helps you access the tears that you need to have today, and being able to draw from that in order to be like, this reminds me, because this has got a lot to do with the emotional intelligence and cognitive behavior, is kind of when people are in a situation that feels very much like a past one, and it looks different on the outside, the players are different, the story's different, but it feels very similar to a past one. Sometimes we have to look at the past situation that mirrors the experience that we're having now in order to see what the similarities are and understand how linear those experiences are, to be able to actually identify what is going on in the present based on what has happened on the past as well. And being able to, like, the amount of women that I speak to that'll be like, I just can't cry. I'm not a crier. I don't get emotional. I don't do anything. And I'm like, okay, so when was that made you stop? Like, where was that you really needed to and just let it all out, and you just chose to swallow it and push it down for the good of everyone else, or for the timing, or for whatever it was? Where was that? And then they'll go back and look at it, and we'll talk about it, and then it will help them access what's going on actually in their present time, because they'll go, yeah, so back then that person was really rude to me, or they were really dismissive, and I'm seeing that in my work right now, and I'm feeling the same amount of repression, but I can't understand what that feels like. And sometimes we need that emotional variance in order to look back, to go, oh, this feels just like then. But we need to be able to have that emotional experience to also be able to identify. I could be, like I said, and like you said, we don't know everything that is capable, but for me, it allows me to just be like, oh, my whole life is now my tool belt. Like my whole life is now my complete resume of emotional variance and emotional spectrum, from the good, from the shameful, from the regret, from the joyful, from the positive, from the suffocating, from the violated, from everything. I'm able to actually, because now I can meet people really quickly and be like, oh, your energy reminds me of that person that was overbearing. I need to step back. Like you identify it quicker because you're not afraid to look at it, because you're actually able to really access it without feeling bad or embarrassed or like you shouldn't still have that shit going on, that you can be like, oh, when I was intimidated then by their actions, this person's intimidating by words, but the feeling feels exactly the same. This is my time to step back away from this, because I trust this, because my intuition went off then and I didn't listen and it made me feel like this. Now it is. Now I step back. Like that's where it comes from. So it's like having this whole insight to your future from your past at the same time. So I'm always really intrigued when I hear people and see people talking about like energy work, because obviously we all, especially the listeners to this podcast, will all obviously know the power of energy intentions and all of those different things. But what about the energy that we put on energy, right? What about the energy that we put on experiences and how we should feel, or what we need to do with that experience? Like, I need to get this trauma gone. So there's this energy of like desperation or like powerlessness over it. What about the energy on that energy? So it always is quite intriguing to me to see how people view it, and how much they will focus on it or not want to focus on it and move away from it and get it, instead of there's a beautiful simplicity to trauma of being like, yeah, that did happen. And we don't actually need to make it bigger than what it is, and we don't need to minimize it either. We just need to neutralize it, that, yeah, that happened. That's a thing that happened in your life, and now we do something with it.
Look, I 100% agree with you. I don't think, just because something perceivably negative happened to you in the past, that you should like try and get over it and get it out. I think all these things, that any life experience that has happened to someone is super useful for your future, and for you to be able to know how to deal with present situations and future situations in a more productive and healthy way. I guess when I'm saying trauma and like being stuck in the body, probably when we, like, certain traumas may create different patterns that might not be, very productive for you in whatever way, and being able to deal with those traumas in a way where you are completing that energetic cycle that should have happened back when that trauma happened, so that you can then be able to look at it in like a more open way, like in a way where you can look at it and go, okay, that happened. That's cool. Like, I learned this and this from it. That's great. Like, I can take that information now and have a better life, because now I've processed that trauma in a healthy way, instead of having it trapped, dealing with any situation that kind of triggers that in an unhealthy way. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I guess that's what I meant, like with, that stuck energy and with trauma and stuff. But
so for me, just like on that, I totally agree with what he's like. I totally agree. Like, you've got to go through the process of, if you didn't speak, you need to speak up. If you didn't cry, you need to actually go through that, actually releasing the anger and the sadness and everything. You need to, for sure, 100% agree. My issue across the board on things like that is the overindulgence of that process.
Right.
I actually think creates more trauma. The overindulgence of the focus on, you say to someone, what is your story? And they instantly will go to the negative signpost throughout their whole, like the identity and the significance that comes from trauma, it becomes now a playing card. And I've got huge issue. I had issues with that over sales, about pushing on people's pain points, because I found that, because of my brain, I was like, I find that incredibly manipulative, because I know what you're doing. You're getting them to access pain so that they feel scared, hurt, sad, violated, whatever, and you're going to swoop in like the savior, which is like loosely codependent behavior anyway, to come in and give you the magic bullet, which allows them to feel like they can keep drawing back off of you, because you are now the medicine for them. And I always have issues with, where is also the line with looking at trauma? Like, where is also where you can traumatize yourself by, because if the universe doesn't understand positive and negative, and you're like, I'm focusing on getting rid of this trauma, I'm focusing getting rid of this, and the whole focus and intention is getting rid of the trauma, but all you're doing is focusing on the trauma all the time, there comes a point where it's like, because I mean, you're obviously saying you go through the process and then you're done with it, but from my experience with other people that I've worked with who've come to me after, people that are like, it's not finished, they're still looking at it, they're still using it as, well, this is why I do this thing, and because of this trauma, and because I've had trauma from my childhood, and because I've had, and it's like all this stuff, and it's like, okay, cool, but we're not talking about that right now. Like, we're not going to focus on every traumatic experience that's ever happened. We're talking about using that experience to help you lay the path for you going forward. But I'm not walking in reverse. Like, I'm not going to keep looking at you while you're walking backwards into that trauma, to enmesh me into the story, to allow me to feel sorry for you, or for me, you're asking me the darkness, right? I'm asking me to make excuses for you because of this, because you don't feel that you have the capacity to do what you're saying that you're doing. So you're telling me all your stuff and enmeshing yourself in that trauma so deeply that you're asking me to make excuses for the things you can or might not be able to do, or for me to think, or for me to put you down a peg or two so that I can be like, well, if she didn't do that, it's because of that, or she wasn't able to do it. I'm like, I literally started a baseline that I think you can do anything. I started a baseline that I started like full respect. So I'll understand your trauma, but it's like, I'm starting from that place of like, I'm also not going to enable it to be the center focus of your healing journey as well. That if it's the same example as when I talk to people that have come out of breakups, okay, and they go, he did this or she did that, and the whole conversation is about every single thing that this person has done. I'm like, yeah, but you're paying me to talk about you, so let's talk about you, because you've just spent 35 minutes telling me everything about them, and you're sick of the attention being on them, and you've just paid me money to talk about them. Like, can we please be about this now? Like, this is what we're here for, is to move forward. Let's do this thing. We can understand how you've got here by looking at it, but we don't need to spend the indulgent amount of time focusing on that at the same time. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe like a happy medium,
yeah,
just maybe touch on
yeah,
maybe something that happened, and then, okay, move forward.
yeah,
It's I
yeah.
kind of get an idea of what happened. Let's move it on. Um, yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
we're doing this.
Yeah, we're doing it.
Okay, so when we had a chat the other day, and you were telling me what you did,
Mm-hmm.
I just had this light bulb moment, where I thought it would be a really good idea to for me to be a client for
Mm-hmm.
this interview, and
Mm-hmm.
for us to do a session, to you to be the
Mm-hmm.
coach, you do your thing on
Mm-hmm.
me, and me to be completely open, authentic and vulnerable, and see what comes of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason that I thought this would be a brilliant idea, well, maybe a couple of reasons. Firstly, because I really feel like I'm here to use myself, to use my story, to use whatever, to allow people to see that it's okay to be it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to not be perfect, especially in the social media world, and the health and wellness sort of arena. There is this perception of all, the coaches out there and what have you, that everyone is just so perfect and shiny and have got their shit together, and all is well and beautiful in their world. And that's bullshit, really. No one's got their shit together. Like, everyone's had stuff. Like, sure, some people are a lot more integrated with all their stuff and maybe deal with life a lot better than other people. But I think the baseline, we're all kind of the same. Like, we all go through shit. We all go through shit all the time. It's a roller coaster, right? We're always going through stuff. And it's definitely not perfect, and we're not perfect, and it's a beautiful thing. And I think the other reason is that I want to show people that it's okay to be vulnerable for the world to see, because it makes it okay. Like, I think it might make it okay for them to go, oh, okay, like, she's on social media just opening opening herself up for the world to see, and all her demons and all her darkness and whatever, and she's okay. Like, it's maybe it's okay for me to do as well. So that's basically the reason why I'm doing this.
So with you, right, because like we said before we recorded this, I said the stuff will reveal itself, right, as we're going through, right? There's like, and before I say anything, right, just for everyone listening and for you, just as a general reminder, when we're talking about this is when I'm pushing and when I'm asking you questions, this isn't a be like right or wrong, good or bad. This is me just being like, I'm just going to push you because energetically you might just want to pull it back a little bit, and you might just want to go like, oh no, that's probably not the right thing to say, because one of the things that's coming off from you, obviously because you're nervous, right, because this is like, oh my God, you're doing this live, but is the level of restriction, right, the level of holding it in, right, and holding it very uniform.
Damn, you're
right?
good. All right. Yeah.
So what is it for you that when we're talking about this stuff that makes you feel that, like, what is it? And you don't have to even tell me the ins and outs of everything that's going on, but it's the level of restriction that is coming up, that feeling like it's almost like having to breathe and be like, I need to really think that through, right? There is a time in your life where you have not thought and done crazy things without thinking. And for you, there's the level of restriction that it's being like, I'm good as long as I'm controlling my face, body, energy, breathing, everything like that, right? It's a conscious choosing, right, of what you're doing. So there's obviously like there's something in there for you that is either afraid or is nervous about actually putting that down because of the result that has happened before, or the outcome that has happened before, when you've just really gone for it and just have been really free, that you feel like everything's going really well right now. If I just keep to this same plan, I'll be able to hold it in, but it's starting to come up here. Like, I can hear it in here, right? Like,
And I
it's
could
starting
feel
to
it there as well. Yeah, absolutely. No, you're 100% right. Look, I've had the biggest thing about judgment, being judged for most of my life. Basically, because I always knew that I was gay, for starters, and being a young child. This is before school even like started. Knowing that I had to keep that a secret from my parents, predominantly because I knew that they would they would not approve in any way, shape or form. So always kind of having that two people life going on, there's the Ruth in front of everyone, and then there's the Ruth in the private darkness sort of realm. So there's that. I think that's a big player. And then yeah, I think always just feeling different, always just feeling like quirky weirdo that people
Mm-hmm.
just don't get. And I know that I can put on that front where I can sound like I know what I'm talking about, and I can sound kind of halfway intelligent, and that, if I do that, people are going to be like, this is
Mm-hmm.
impressive,
Mm-hmm.
like that kind of stuff. But if I just like if I let it all out and I just, say fuck every second word, which is what if I'm really relaxed, like I'm a sailor pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's that judgment thing again. It's like people are going to judge me. They're going to think I'm this, I'm that. And, uh, and I guess I've been working on that a lot,
Mm-hmm.
especially of late. And I care less now, but it's still there.
So do you resent yourself for having picked this to be so hard?
As in, like,
Do you resent
as in like
your
choosing this life?
yeah,
Like,
do
is it?
you feel annoyed with yourself and have that friction with yourself that it couldn't have been normal, or that it couldn't, like, why did it have to, because it's like, accept yourself, yes, for sure, obviously,
Hmm.
but I think there's almost like a level of um it's like annoyance and frustration with yourself that it's been like, why did, it's like someone being like, why why couldn't it have just been easier, like why has it had to have been this, and but the blame seems to be shifting internally to be like, it's like if you ever see people in a couple and they're always like disappointed with someone, like being like, why can't you just live up to what I thought you could be, instead of it being like, why can't you, is there like that level of resentment and resenting the fact that it has been this way, and there's somehow as if you can't choose, like you haven't been able to choose your sexuality, or it's part of you, it's you, it is all of you,
Mm-hmm.
but yet there seems to be this kind of disconnect of being able to really really accept that on the level of not just the accept yourself top end level, but this like if this could have been different, would I have, or why has this been so hard, and why did I choose it to be this hard? Yeah.
There is a level of resentment, but I think it's like I've must have just pushed it right down, because what you're saying resonates, but not on a conscious level,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like it definitely resonates. Um, because up here, I'm like, I actually think that my life was this way on purpose, because I'm here to do this work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to help. I'm here to serve. I'm here to do all those things. Right. Um, so I needed that shit. I needed
Mm-hmm.
that hard life shit
Mm-hmm.
to be the person I am today, so that I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an acceptance, but I think, yes, you're right. Like deep down, there is that fuck, like why couldn't it
Mm-hmm.
have been easier?
Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to your parents and that whole like living, how we we're talking about being kind of almost like a shapeshifter, having dual identities, right? One of the big things that happens with dual identities, right, is you compartmentalize in both things. So you don't see much of cross pollination between the two compartments. So it's like if someone's like at work and they're loud and bubbly and all of that, they hold and reserve that for that part of their character. Then when they're at home, they're grumpy, or they're quiet, or they're introverted, right? But you don't see much cross-pollination between the two identities. So there's obviously something in, because I'm going to round all of this back around, right? There's obviously something in these two identities that you feel like is lost in that, you've got your identity now, which is the one you choose, all the good things, right? But there's obviously something in that compartmentalization that you've had to give up about yourself in order to be the full person that you are now, because there's this grabbing at, like, because you're looking at it as dual, not parts of you, right? So there's something that you feel like in order for you to have been this full person now, there's parts of you that you've had to let go of that you want to be able to access, but it's so far away from where you are now that and that's what I'm talking about with the integration, because it's looking like it's dual, but it's actually been you the whole time. It's just been over exacerbated or over elevated parts of you that you just don't feel like integrates with you now, that you really need to grab hold of. So whether that's like the free, light, whatever it is that was in that other part of your identity that you feel like you can't integrate that in, or you can't accept that you can be both of those things simultaneously at the same time. It doesn't have to be separated like that, that you can cross-pollinate those different emotions, or those different ways of expressing is the word I want to use, like the way of how you've expressed yourself in one part of your life versus how you express yourself now. It's like all of a sudden there seems to be this huge divide going on with that as well. Does that resonate for you?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think because I've been doing some work with Holly, as you know, I feel like I've been opening up more. Like, so I've had a lot of walls and stuff built up over time, and with the work I've done with Holly, like I felt like my heart has opened and walls are coming down. And there have been moments where I have felt like those two have come together. But I didn't know necessarily that was what was happening. But now that you're saying that, it kind of makes sense now. So yeah, I can't put my finger on like what exactly I have.
Okay, get in the dirt with me, girl. Right? Okay, can we get in the dirt here? Because I'm like, you're saying the things, but you're still thinking conscious restriction. Yeah, I know you are, but get down in the dirt with me here, right? This is pre-recorded. If you don't like it, you can scrap it. Do you know what I mean? So
I'm not going
get in the dirt with me, right?
Cool. Right?
What is it that's making, because for me, energetically, just from this, I can feel your need to scream, right? I can feel your need to actually be like, shut the fuck up, like wanting to scream it out and go crazy and be like, the walls coming down. Do you know what I mean? It's like a feeling of being trapped within your own skin, right? Like wanting to actually just be like, whoa, and just wanting to have like how I describe it, because I get these days as well where I want to rage. Like I just want to rage for 2 days straight and just be like, yeah, to everything and everyone that moves, and just want to spit fire at people in days like that. Get in the dirt with me right now. What is it that you're holding in, that you're so desperately wanting to just be like, God damn, like I'm so over it. I'm so done with this right now.
I'm thinking. I actually.
Oh, you're thinking, my God, you know exactly what it is, and you're still, because you're walling me out. You're walling, but because I can see it. I'm just like, you can tell me and open it out, or we can completely, like, it doesn't faze me any. But if you really want to go there, you're going to have to really accept the emotion that's like, God damn it, I just let it out. Do you know what I mean? Let out what it is.
There is a rage. You're right. There is a rage. I can feel it. And I can feel it like just building up in my chest and my throat. Like I feel it. But up here, there's no connection, is blank. Like it's like I'm feeling it. I don't know. I can't. There's something blocking that communication right now, and it's up here. I'm like, I want to tell you, I want to tell you everything. Right now, my body's not helping, my mind's not helping. I don't know.
Okay, So when all of those are kind of not aligning up like that, right? It's for right now, you're still not feeling safe doing this, right? Because and still not feeling like, because I can see it, you can feel it, right? And I know that you want to let it out. And I know because what happened, okay, let's not talk about what's going on. I'll give you the example of what happens when, not just when you internalize rage and in the body and all of that stuff. I'll talk about what you actually will do with that rage if you future pace that, if you don't find a way of being able to just be like, you know, I'm sick of being good all the time. I'm sick of thinking about everyone else all the time. I'm sick of having to put every other human being first. I'm sick of having to be the listener for everyone. All of the things that it's like, I just want to not have to worry about this. All what happens with rage when you like future pace that is when it goes down and when it becomes in that dark place where you're kind of like doing all the things from here up and not really accessing that at its fullest, or even in your mind and things like that, is the rage. Obviously, everyone knows rage and anger come directly from pain, right? But what happens is that rage leads to resentment. It leads to really high expectations on yourself, and it leads to really high expectations on others. It leads to when you're in that place is feeling completely victimized and powerless. That's what rage is, because you're in a fight response and you're in a rage response because you feel like you actually have no control. You actually don't feel like you have any power. So you go into like, oh, I just don't feel like I can actually get to where I want to go or make the choices that I want to make. So then from our internal kind of moving forward, and what that does silently is it starts to set up patterns where people either keep letting you down, keep overpowering, intimidating, or overbearing you, keep literally keep making choices for you without your say so, keep writing you off and dismissing you because it accesses the rage in you, accesses that like powerlessness and being dismissed and being forgotten about. And it just that's how the pattern recreates outside of you, because you keep getting pushed to one side, you keep getting forgotten about, because it's pain in the lower end of it where you feel like you're not being treated as if you should be fully at the table, right? You even said to me, I think that I'm half smart, right? Go back and watch this and watch how you talk about yourself. You're dismissive of yourself, right? And the rage comes from not being able, like not feeling like you're a fucking strong contender with all these other people, knowing that you've got the capacity and the potential, but always feeling like you're being dismissed because you're not able and don't want to access the rage. You're going to be in situations going forward that allows you to stop being treated like you're a contender at that table, or you feel like you've earned your way there, not just being there out of good grace or charity, like actually be there in your full merit because you're even describing yourself that way, right? And it's like the rage comes from being constantly being like, being pushed to one side, or people just don't realize what I know, or the things that I've done, or the things that I've come from, or the experiences that I've had, or the things that I can show them. They just keep looking at me like I'm this one-dimensional thing, or that I'm just this, or what I know isn't like what other people know, so it's not of any value. So, I mean, I guess I could do these coaching calls or I could do these things, but I have to do half the price because I'm not as good as the other people. Rage, rage, rage. That's all that it comes from. It just but that's how it externalizes itself, right? That's what happens when you don't access the rage. That's what happens. Is it speaking now?
Yeah, like 100%. 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
So now tell me the rage. Tell me what you're annoyed about that keeps happening.
Yep. Okay. So you're right. Like it was everything you fucking hit the nail on the head, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not feeling that I am as good as other people that are maybe doing similar work to me. Knowing that I have some intelligence, but not enough. So therefore charge less. Getting shut down by people that only think that they are smarter than me.
Mm-hmm.
And me allowing that to happen because I believe that I can't defend myself properly.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, this bloody phone of mine.
No, you're right. That's been a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Not speaking up in order to not create tension, turmoil,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, whenever something's not feeling right for me.
Mm-hmm. So remember how I was talking about the resentment earlier?
Yeah.
About how much you resent yourself for not backing yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, and choosing it to be hard, because that's the one that I wanted to lean on. Choosing it to be hard, like you've always got a battle, right? Like you've always, this is stuff that I work on all the time with myself as well. That's how I can recognize, right? Because of my emotional, I can see this, right? That it's like always having to be like, I'm never going to be the people that are up there. I'm always going to be down here. And I'm fine. I've made peace with being down here. That's where I want to be. That's where I want to be at the grassroots level, and blah, 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 all the things, right? But really what it is the fact that you're raging is because your potential hasn't been realized, because you actually know how smart you are. You actually have a good sense of self-esteem in your logic, right? You know it. That's where the rage comes from, because if you didn't have the rage, right, you wouldn't actually think that it would go another way. You would feel pressured and trapped and suffocated, because you would think that other people think you're smarter and you don't want to let them down, because you actually can't do the thing. You actually know how smart you are. You actually are embarrassed to say how smart you are. You think that it's unhumble, and you think that is that even a word?
It is now.
Yeah, it is now. But you don't actually think that you can do what, like you actually know that you have the capacity to do the things. Oh my God.
It's all
Seriously,
good.
how's
Just
my
keep
phone?
talking. Just keep
Yeah,
talking.
can you still hear if I keep going? Yeah.
Yeah.
But you actually have the capacity to do all the things. You know it. You know that you've got the smarts for it. You know when you hear these other people talk, and then you go, I'm just being judgmental, and then you start to roll yourself back, right? You start to judge yourself and shame yourself that you're thinking, I am just as smart as them, and the other part of you is going, no, you're definitely not. Look, pick your lane, stay in your lane, and all of the stuff that comes up with it. But really the rage comes from because your potential isn't being realized, and you're getting annoyed and resentful of yourself that you're making it harder than what it needs to be, because maybe the fear of being yourself from your past experience has been there's going to be rejection and judgment and all of that, and you're afraid that that's going to come back up if you really step into what you're doing, and it's not going to be as easy and free-flowing as what it is now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you are completely unsatisfied right now. You are completely sitting on the edge and not connecting to anything. You're sitting on the side of it being like, I feel like there's more and I can't figure it out. And it's only because you want to make it hard for yourself because you're the battler on the grassroots level, right? So it's like the rage comes from the fact that your potential isn't being realized.
Okay. Yep. I agree. 100%. So what do I do about it?
So what you do about it, right, is you need to, first off, you need to actually, because I'm not done here, right? So before we get into it, because you're still holding it out, right? You can feel it, right? You're still holding it back. And I know that when I do, you'll need the time to go away and really sit with this. It'll come up once this phone goes down and once this laptop shuts. This will really hit you hard, because you'll start to see it everywhere in your relationships, your business contacts, everything. You'll start to see people being dismissive or talking about you like, oh, she'll be fine, don't worry about that, or whatever, or she'll be cool with it, you don't need to ask her, just rock up, it'll be fine, right? You'll start to see that level of dismissiveness all throughout your life. So with having all that rage and that, one, yes, is there's such a level of you not speaking up because you're not backing the intelligence that you have. You're not backing up the ability to be adaptable like you have been, because shapeshifters, people that have dual identities covering things up, are so emotionally connected, have such high empathy, have such a good way of reading people, that you are still deeming that as like something that is bad, or something that empathy is good, but the flip side of that coin is manipulator. And if you see that as being like, I'm just trying to get what I want, or I'm just trying to, I know what I'm doing, so it feels bad because I know what I'm doing, right? So you're like, I'm doing good for you by me not stepping forward, because if I do that, it'll become the Ruth show and everyone else will be left behind. I don't want to do that to the people that have helped me up, so I don't want to do that to them, right? But the rage that's going on in that is, I mean, you're going to have to go, and you will find the way that you need to let this out, whether it's crying, screaming into a pillow, going for a swim and screaming your head off, going for a boxing match, whatever it is, to actually be like, but it has to be primal, because that comes from a place of being like, I had the opportunity as a child to be my fullest self and was told that it wasn't good enough, was told that it wasn't, that I wouldn't be accepted this way, and I would have all the love that I could ever want if I did it this way, right? So I did it that way to get everything. And because it was easier, because for your stuff, and what I'm seeing in this, it's because it's the good for everyone else, right? It's cohesion, it's not rocking the boat, it's trying to help them, it's trying to not outshine other people. You don't want to steal the limelight, you want to give them their moment, you don't want to cut anyone's lunch, you don't want to do all the things. It's got this good intention, right, at the front end, but secretly underneath you're like, why do I feel like I'm a martyr lying on the floor wasting my time and my life when I could be doing all these other things? Because it will make you resent people so hard in your relationships, because you'll know the answer that will help them and they're not coming to you for the advice that you could quite easily give them, because they're so dismissive, and you're so dismissive of the advice that you have, that you're like seeing them doing this thing over and over again, and you want to help them, and you've literally molded your entire existence around helping other people, that the resentment that I was talking about earlier and the rage are going to keep building until you're like, nah, done with you, don't want to talk to you anymore, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm canning this whole business, and the self-sabotage, because you'll feel it start to creep up from a negative place of like rage and resentment. It'll start to come up where you'll get that opportunity to be about yourself or be about them, and you'll choose them, like future pacing this, you'll choose them, and then you'll absolutely despise the ground they walk on, because you have sacrificed everything for them, and they'll either give up on it, or they won't do it, or they weren't that committed, and you knew that, and you could have helped them in a better way, and you've given up everything for them, for you to help them, and then missed out on this huge opportunity and being annoyed at them because they keep dismissing you. What you need to do is you need to actually sit down and actually go, what do I actually, when I'm not thinking about everyone else and how I can be good to everyone else, and how tall poppy syndrome and all of that stuff at the front end, if I take that away and sit quietly in my room where no one can see this and write down actually what I think I'm capable of, and actually was to stop dismissing myself like I don't belong at the boardroom table or on that stage or talking with those people or whatever the hell it is, and actually was to stand there and get up and go after it and not dismiss myself, and actually be the self-representative that I need and what I needed as a child, to step out in front and go, no, we accept all of this. For you to actually stop resenting yourself for it being hard, and actually choose for it to be easy, and actually choose for it to be the way that you want, and that you don't have to have dual personality, be good for yourself or be good for others. You can do both, right? And actually to write down what you can be and should be, and to actually realize the fullest of your potential, of what you actually think you're capable of, not what is realistic, but what you actually think that you could do if you had the right tools, right people around you, and actually got to the places that you needed to go. I can promise you those relationships with the other people will be 100 times better, because they will be like, who knew? Like, look at what she's actually, and they'll all say, we knew you could do it the whole time. We just were waiting for you to get it. Because you'll hear that your whole life too, right? I bet you've heard that your whole life. We know how smart you are. We know the potential that you've got. But you don't know it. And you're like, yeah. But this is the thing. If you don't want to be dismissed by everyone else, the first person that has to actually put you up front and actually go and get loud and go and speak, because it's noise for you, because you're so controlled in the noise, right? That's why I'm saying it's the primal rah, it's the the talking, it's the yelling, it's the hang on, wait a minute, I'm here now. Like, you don't speak for me. I'm right here. I'll talk. Thank you very much. You don't, no. You don't make decisions for me. You don't have answers and solutions for me without my say so. This is my life here. It's about really the noise factor of being seen and heard, because I bet you were very quiet in your dual personalities as a child. One of those things was submissive and quiet and huddled and just in the back and the wallflower of everything. So this is, but integrate, right? Be the wallflower when you want to learn, and be the teacher and the loud one when you want to speak. But you don't have to have dualistic, compartmentalize, cross-pollinate and integrate them into the same thing. It's about really going, I'm going to do the things that I have stopped myself from doing. If that is, if I huddle, and this makes me, you know, how we're talking earlier about, oh, this reminds me of a time where I'd normally, in big groups like this, I would normally huddle. That is so the time to be stepping up, right? Because identify those feelings of where that came from and what that reminds you of, and where it's easy to go is not the place you should be going.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Take a minute for that. Like I said to you on the phone, I know this is intense. I know how big it is. Talk to me. How do you feel? How does it feel?
I feel like there's a lot of energy like in the solar plexus happening right now. There's like, it's just like pumping. I feel good. I don't know. See, I feel like there's a protective mechanism happening within me right now, which happens a lot when I'm trying to like do this kind of work. So I like, yeah, I want to be able to let go. I do. Like, I honestly like.
So with work in what I'm doing and what we're kind of talking about, right, is I mean, beyond everything else, podcasts, everything like that, right, is that you're trying to protect yourself because your belief around that protection is like saying to me, you just don't even know how much is in there. And if I let that out, I don't know if I can rein it in. I don't know if I can control it. And I think I'll hit the deck or I'll do something wild and crazy. So I know you're telling me to get it out, Sam, but I really don't believe that it's a small little thing, because there's so much, and I know how much there is in there, that it's the fear of actually letting it out and what that will do, because right now it feels safer for everyone else and for you to not walk that demon out and not to let it out. So it's not so much protecting you. You feel like you're protecting other people, because if you let it out, you might say, do, act, whatever, in a way that's going to really be like, oh, I'm going to get honest, go. And then be like, it's not going to be good for anybody else. And that's a good thing at the front end, but it's also you reiterating to yourself that you can't be yourself with anyone else. So if you honestly feel like you can't, if you can't be yourself with people, or don't feel like people are accepting you, but you're not giving them the opportunity to actually get to know you, so you're going to keep this same feedback loop going of being like, people won't accept me, but you're not giving them the chance to. And it's enabling you to stay in this place. You've not only trapped yourself, but you set booby traps off that if you even get close to getting out, that you're hanging on to being in there, that this is the story that you want to cling to. So I'm not going to force you to let it all out if you don't want to. And that might be something that you need to really sit and either rationally, emotionally, energetically, all of the above, sit and really contemplate. But now that you're aware of that going on, you're not going to be able to do it as easily now. And that's my start point for coaching, is like, I'm planting the seed now. So when you see this shit, you can't unconsciously be like, I don't know how I got here. You know that it's you at the center being like, people have let me down, the people that I've loved the most in my life, who should have loved me and accepted me no matter what. So my belief going forward from looking that way is that no one is going to accept me, that no one is going to understand me, that no one it actually wants to get to know me. And then the feedback loop of that is like, this is a way for you to then actually feel from a dark place that no one wants to talk about. It's a way for you to be like, I'm actually so much smarter, and I'm going to keep it hidden from everybody else to punish them. You don't get to know the real me because you don't actually deserve it, right? So you're actually punishing them and punishing yourself at the same time. So you're keeping not only this story alive, but you're also keeping the belief that no, you're not giving people the opportunity, and you're punishing them and yourself as well. No one wins, right? Whatever you feel that you're doing for other people, you're actually limiting your own relationships, friendships, family, everything. You're limiting them because of the protectiveness, and not from a, let your defenses down or whatever. It's more like you're not actually trusting them because you don't trust yourself in what you'll see if you actually let it all out. You're not actually sure if you want to see the ugliness and the dark thoughts and the rage and resentment that you have for other people and for yourself, because you're spending so much time trying to do good for other people that you don't actually want to be like, I'm actually punishing you guys because you don't deserve to get to know the real me, because you haven't earned it, you haven't worked hard enough, you're not pushing me hard enough to get there. So I don't actually, like, I'm going to hold you back at arm's length at the same time, right? I'm actually really, really smart, and I'm not going to tell you, but I'm actually secretly judging how fucking stupid you are, because I'm actually really smart underneath, and it's really cool for me because it's like an inside joke, right? Because but you're limiting the ability to have deeper, meaningful relationships, family dynamics, everything, because you're dismissing yourself. That's the top end of it. But the right underneath is like this story that you're hanging on to, that no one's going to be able to accept you, comes from a place of you don't actually want to see what's going on under there, because you're horrified at what might come out. You're horrified of what that darkness might look like, because secretly you're still, even at the very core of it, have still fragmented the good and the bad part of you, and you're trying to use the bad to elevate the good up to the surface, but it can't be done. They've got to both rise at the same time in order for it to be balanced. And you're going to have to, whether it's now, whether it's in a week, whether it's tomorrow, whenever, is actually sit down and actually consciously look now. Because that's, like I said, I don't do one coaching session and heal everyone from everything forever. I've just planted the seed for you, that now when you see these dynamics of someone being like, what do you think, Ruth? And you go, I'm fine. You'll go, oh, I'm actually not telling her that I don't like that. I'm actually not giving her the opportunity to actually get to know me, and then I'm going to hate her for not knowing me at all, and be like, see, no one cares about me. And you're setting up that loop. And then beyond all the external, as you push down further and further and further into your own core of everything, into your own kind of the origin of that story, it's because there's somewhere in you as well, or in your history, where you had an opportunity to stand up for yourself and you didn't. And there's so much resentment in that you didn't take an opportunity or say what you should have, and it has had this huge dog leg from everywhere else, that you're hanging on to this story being like, one, you don't deserve to get to know me. Two, I am actually really smart. It's an inside joke. I'm actually quietly in the darkness laughing at the things that you're coming out with, because I actually already know, and you're talking to me like I'm an idiot, but I actually already know, but okay, right? There's so much of that going on underneath that now when you look around, that's my ideal for you, is to actually look around and go, oh my God, that's the trap. And there's the 5 traps of when I step out of that stop me. And then I've got residual ones that go on the outside. So you are literally, you know how we started, I told you I'd circle this whole lot back. I was saying about going back into looking back and being like, well, it's because of this is the reason why I don't. And it's because I wasn't accepted, or it was because I had to do that is why I'm doing that. It's like, no, you're now creating the center of it, and you're creating the ripple of how you can actually stay in that vortex yourself to keep that feedback back loop going. And it literally, like anything, is just a choice of being like, it doesn't happen overnight. There's no instant healing for anyone. There's no silver bullet, but it's like literally getting in front of the choices and being like, so I wonder why my friendships or relationships don't work out. But really, resentment is a signpost for divorce and separation. It's like as soon as a resentment creeps in, that's where it starts. If you are resenting people or annoyed at people for not including you or not putting you in the conversation, or you're seeing them as not asking more enough or considering you, right, and you're feeling that resentment, it's literally because at the center of the creation of that whole thing, you're trying to prove yourself right, that no one gives a shit. And now when you go out, that's all I want you to see from this whole session, is being able to actually seeing that web playing out, because it'll shake you to the core of being like, now I've just got to be like, actually, what do you want for dinner? Oh, I don't really care. Actually, I want Indian food because I love Indian food. Did you know that about me? I love Indian food. That's my favorite. And I've got this great restaurant. I haven't told anyone, but I actually go there on my own. But I didn't want anyone else to know because I know you guys don't like Indian food, but I love it. Can we let them in order to do that, right?
Yep. I hear you. And I will, absolutely. You're right. Like you've hit the nail on the head, like the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. And it's really interesting because it's something that, like everything you've been saying has resonated, and it's obviously been playing in the back of my head, but it's not something that is conscious.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a conscious thing. It's not something that I'm actually thinking about. But it's definitely there, and it's spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Nice work.
Thanks.
And thank you.
No, and look, anytime, right? Like I love it. I love it. And like I said, all I want to do for this very first thing is being able to plant the seed for you to be able to actually, like, it's like, you remember those magic eye photos where you'd look and it was just patterns on the front? Now I want you to actually see the pattern that's happening underneath it and see that you are creating all of it. Like, you are creating all of it. And literally it's just choices. It's just choices to get you out of it. It's just speaking up when you normally want to huddle. And again, like we were saying at the beginning of the podcast about identifying the emotion, if you feel that same level of emotion of like, I need to, like when they said this thing or did this thing, I would normally, this is where I stop. That's the time to go. Like, and that's the time to do other things. Identify that. As I think when you listen to this whole bit, you'll see what I've done, like this circle of what we've been talking about. You'll see where it comes in. And my whole goal for you is just to plant the seed, but also for you to be really aware of just how powerful you are and how much potential. If I can see it, and having 2 conversations with you ever, and I can see the potential and the intelligence, and I'm like, girl, cut the shit. I know how smart you are. Like I know how smart you are. Don't, because it's also like for relationships, it's like, don't belittle me and disrespect me that you think that I can't handle you at your fullest. You actually don't think that I can do it, and you're disrespecting me now, thinking that I can't cope with the truth, and thinking that I can't actually hold and handle seeing and hearing you at your fullest. Don't disrespect my ability. You know what I'm saying? So it's like same thing for the respect, because that's the darkness that we were talking about on our phone call about. Most people don't really be like, I'm not doing that. It's like, yeah, but all the secret little things that are happening on the inside is what's actually playing out on the outside. So it's I don't think that you can handle the truth, right? Or I'm not going to give you that, you don't deserve, but all those little things, it's not conscious. That dark shit's not conscious, and it's not planned or malicious or calculated or cunning or anything like that, but it's just stuff that happens from our basic human survival place. So now going forward, you'll probably be fine, or you might get off this call and be like, I just need to go and have a cry, or I need to just have a minute to just really let that all sink in properly on my own, without cameras, without anything, to actually just really let that settle for a minute. And just kind of going forward, being able to go, okay, now I get it. Now I get this actualization of my own stuff.
Yeah. And that's what I'll be doing. I'll be sitting on that couch right there, meditating on it a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, this has been quite illuminating. So yeah, thank you so much. Oh, is the session done?
Yeah, for now, I think I don't want to overstimulate you, and I don't want to overwhelm you with, I mean, because I do weekly sessions for the first 4 weeks with my clients. So like we really like break it. So I just don't want to overwhelm you. I think it's enough for you to really, I mean, as like a final thought on the session, it's like, just be your own fucking cheerleader. Hey, like everyone around you is telling you what we can see, and you're out to prove us all wrong, to prove yourself right, that no one believes you. You know what I mean? It's like no one wins, no connection happens in that way. You can't deepen anything. If you want depth, you have to be able to jump in and swim the depths of it and not be playing around in the shallow end. And so it's like, be your own cheerleader, but also trust people. You don't have to trust them fully with everything, but trust that the people around you who invest their time with you, they don't have to do it, right? They do it because they want to. No one does anything they don't want to do. No one hangs out. If I don't want to take a phone call, I won't take a phone call. Like, I'm not forced to be friends with you or friends with anyone else. I'll do whatever I want. So trust them enough that if they're there, they're there because they choose to, not because you force them to, or they feel sorry for you, or they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it because they are choosing to. So give them that amount of respect to actually to trust them enough to give yourself there, because they actually are probably desperate to know more about you and have been trying to dig in. So it's like, you can allow them in that little bit. And also, don't be so damn hard on yourself, right? Like, we're all here. I can resonate with it and see it because I'm there. We're all there. I can see those things because I deal with that all the time. I will coach someone else and I'll see other things that come up for me that I'm just maintaining at the same time. No one has it together. No one has it figured out. Everyone is just taking day by day and making their choices in the moment with the knowledge that they have. No one has it together. The most ascended, whatever, they don't have it together. It just looks pretty and shiny on the outside, but we're all going through our stuff and we're all just trying to make it work best for us to find the most peace and happiness and joy that we can through a human experience. So it's like, don't think that you're the only one going through it. And also don't be so hard on yourself that you are, in fact, human.
Preach.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate everything that you've said. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have a lot to think about after this. So yeah, Sam, I think we can probably leave it on that note. Thank you so much for taking the time to be a guest, an amazing, illuminating guest on my podcast. And I'm sure people that listen in on this are going to get lots of stuff too. So really appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And I appreciate the openness, right? Like, really, to really go there and just be shook down with it, and really being able to share that on an open platform for people that might be, this is the work, right? This is what you talk about that you do, is showing people how to do it. This is it. Like, this is the proof is in the pudding, right? So I think it's really amazing that you've made that choice to be that vulnerable and uncomfortable and open, all of the things. Like, I think it's really, really great. So it was really great to be part of it. And I'm really honored that you allowed me to do it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. My pleasure.